Our arrangements. Okay, my name's Bo, and I'm an addict. And I hosted a couple of guys at the house. I didn't get to sleep till 1. Somehow I woke up about 5 or 6 and stayed up. So knowing myself, because in NA, living clean, you learn yourself, and it's like a whole new book, You get a new page every day. And so one time I had to tell my story, and there was no microphone. It was outdoors, a big barn, about 150 people. So I yelled in full voice, "Can you hear me in the back?" I said, well, if I start dimming, like wave your hands, I won't be incited. I want you to do that. So I found that adversity is one of the most important tools in good recovery. Because, every time it seems like it's a little tough or, if I just hang in there. I'm watching that John Kerry movie, Jim Carrey, of Yes Man. And the guys were they were passing out, so I interrupted my programming. But it's strange. I mean, in the movie, what he did was make himself uncomfortable, and every time he said yes when he wanted to say no, then he'd get a bonus. You never see it coming. It was always a pain in the ass. I mean, but a lot of recovery is like that. And you just keep the faith. You let the other guy be the fox, and you be the turtle. Go slow. Yeah, that's fine, fella. Just wish them well. Because if you're surrendered, you work in the program, you got the luck, baby. You really do. You'd be amazed. And people with long clean time, they'll forget that, and they'll stop going to meet and stop reading literature. They're just like, well, it's for newcomers. I'm above all that shit. Oh, you get some bad luck too. You want to try that? I mean, it'll wake your ass up if it don't kill you. But so I'm always learning. When I was 14 years old, by the time I was discovering, sex, I also noticed that nobody in the world seemed to know what in the hell was going on. Because I was kind of a brash kid. I have a very active genetic code. I'm 75 years old. Do I look 75? I don't feel 75.
You don't look it either.
Okay. Thank you, my friends. But I think my whole life has been for a purpose. And I had to go through what I went through to be here today, And so, you can't think of active addiction as leading to a hell of a good payoff, And it's all about consciousness and being able to not only communicate, but also hear what the other person's going through. A lot of times you can talk to somebody about paying attention to what they won't say. You can even bring up something, they'll change the subject, We're real creatures. But creatures from the sad lagoon. But I remember when I was 14, I was going to Theosophical Society, and I was reading books about Zen Buddhism and enlightenment. And I thought, boy, I wish the hell, I'd been born over there, where the good stuff is. And we didn't have a whole lot, of what I think could be really cool in America and in our culture, and very healing. And one of the things I like about Asia is they have a thing where instead of military service, young men and women, I guess, put on a yellow robe and go around and help people, help old people. They do manual labor. The villages feed them, rice bowl. Whatever you do that's positive like that's called your rice bowl. and the villagers will feed you. And that's a whole lot better than driving, young men and some women insane and throwing a gun in their hands and teaching them, just how to mow people down. And, you know, surely to God, I'm not alone in that. And I think, one of the things that apparently happened back in the Roosevelt days was they created jobs where guys would go out and like build these log cabins and shit way out in the woods, up the Smoky Mountains. And I've gone to those cabins and I've thought to myself, well, that is a sublime, beautiful thing. And the cabins are still in great shape. I haven't been up there in years. Probably wear masks out nowadays, but Narcotics Anonymous grew out of our individual desperation. And just very, very occasionally, one of us would notice another one of us, and that was the spirit of the NA. That was the beginning. And if you really study the programs that came before the Washingtonians, AA, all those things. One of the really interesting things, like in Bill Wilson's autobiography, or biography at least, it shows his last hospital slip. And it's like period of addiction, number of relapses. So I remember very well back when I first got clean 45 years ago at the time, being told, because we all had to go to Liquid Fellowship, when I got clean in NA, there was not a single NA meeting in Georgia. There was not a meeting in Atlanta. There was not a meeting in the South. And I remember starting and held 7 meetings in 1971. And I mean, I have witnesses, and I've told people, and they leave that out of the history. Can you dig that, man? I mean, like, how about that for selfless, And I don't give a damn, so what? So what? I mean, my life is a miracle. I could not, if I had been in a particularly good spell of dreaming wonderful things to come, I could not top what has actually happened. And if I would rather be me and have walked the path I've walked in recovery than walk on the moon or Mars. How's that? I mean, if I ain't lying or out of my damn mind, that's pretty good. I remember asking around like everybody else did, who's working on the book? And, everything, we had the white booklet, we had a couple of little readings and stuff, mainly from the white booklet. And, we approached NA because, it was just, it was just as, in our mind, it's just as acceptable that NA was just joke, would not work, some madman's creation, so we're going to go to a meeting. You like coffee? And we kind of studied it like that. I did. But, I'm in Topher's Future Shock, he talked about cultural circuit riders. And that's what I am. I can blend in. I can pick up the lingo. I can be phony if I want to. But somebody, when I was at the end of my active addiction, like sticking the needle in my arm to see well, you could go in through the back of your arms. That'd be okay. And there's veins and shit in there, right? And yeah, you can do that, but it's a lot of trouble. And the only thing that made me feel good was helping kids down on 10th Street in this city. And there was thousands of young people came down Friday evening and stayed till Sunday evening. And we helped them. I'd get them out of the jail. I'd get their abscesses lanced. I mean, just a bunch of things. I did it for years. year and a half out of 70 and 71. And it got really rough down there. I mean, to the extent where I had to strap on a loaded license 6 gun at dark every evening. But we helped those kids, you know. And I was so famous from the 11 o'clock news, and, you know, everybody, you know, healthy percentage of Atlanta people watched the 11 o'clock news, so they all knew me. When I started showing up in the liquid fellowship, one of the damn phenomenons I had to sort out was they knew for Bo S to show up in that fellowship was like a signal event because they had been studying me on TV. But the downside of that is I didn't have any money, I didn't have any bodyguards, and I didn't at the time have a gun. And I was like a great guy for these doped up men to try to come into the store and beat my ass. And thankfully, I was a really good street fighter. And I mean, you can't really see the scars like you used to when I was younger, but they're there. And I mean, I just, you know, I'm real lucky to be alive. And I remember at the time, that was our normal. I remember coming in one night, I was still drinking. I came in and I was walked out of my little makeshift apartment that I made in the back of the store. And I had a gun, but my friend had a .44 Magnum. So I borrowed his gun and I aimed at that lock. And then right at the last second, I thought, like, if I go through, that's going to hit the mirror in there. So I went like that and then pulled the trigger. And if I had hit that damn lock, the whole thing would have gone off like a hand grenade, right? A .44 Magnum, the biggest hand, you know, Clint Eastwood and all that shit. But, you know, I lived through that. It just is kind of done the same thing with electric drill, you know, just punched a hole in the door. I missed the lock entirely. I don't know how we got in. You can always tear a lock off if you really want to. But after that, I kept going through like libraries and magazines and talking to people and public officials and stuff like that. You know, looking, is there any answer anywhere for, you know, our problem? I mean, just, you know, I didn't find it in terms of just drugs, but, you know, I wanted to change, and I actually sought that the way, you know, when you put your life on the line daily. I never shot anybody, I never wanted to, but I did arrest 2 people, or 3 people, but we did some good, and the Vietnam War ended, and the Strip died almost overnight. So I went on, and I remember I had read about Narcotics Anonymous, the name, you know, just in a book about Synanon in California. And so I called up Chuck Dietrich and introduced myself and asked him a couple of questions. And he got a little huffy, you know. He was a very you know, scale type famous person, you know. Who was I? I said, well, I'll see you in the morning. He said, well, I thought you were calling me from Atlanta. I said, yeah, we got airplanes over here, though. I'll see you in the morning. So I stayed over there 3 days. And I didn't think it was particularly, it was kind of interesting to me. They had the Synanon game, and I did that several times. And I was there for about 3 days and then flew home. And so, I mean, I had a really vested interest seeking a answer. I didn't have a good definition of what my problem was, but I didn't smoke dope. I didn't shoot acid anymore, or crystal, or any of that stuff, hashish. But that was because it no longer got me high. It's just I got real forgetful and spacey and shit like that, and I kind of like doing things, you know. So I just, they say they put rats in a cage and addict them to heroin, and then if they cut a hole over here and make a tunnel to some female rats and some tunnel to some plane equipment and stuff like that, the rats will bypass the heroin and go cold turkey and go see the girls or go do the exercise wheels and stuff like that. based on that kind of scientific discovery, the country of Portugal made all drugs legal. The European NA convention was held in Portugal. I have friends that are at this conference or festival that attended that convention in Portugal. And people are learning. You know, I looked it up on Google, and they mentioned Colorado, because Colorado's kind of progressive in ways. But see, when they legalized all drugs, the heroin addiction went down. They saved a hell of a lot of money from brutalizing cops, court system, incarceration, treatment. I mean, has anybody in the room thought a hard, serious, I didn't see you, brother, about what treatment is? You know, they make a really good buck off of treatment. No wonder they would try to come through our service structure and control the recovering population planet-wide. If you don't know, why are addicts today do not know the difference between a trustor and a trustee? They have no idea. And I'm going to leave it at that. You check it out. It's your fellowship. I'm just a member. But boy, if I ever been paying attention, I mean, it was written notes and comparisons, you know. And after all that crap I went through on the strip and all that and Synanon, I didn't join Synanon, but I learned. And I learned that there was no help anywhere on the face of the planet Earth for addict seeking recovery. Zero, nothing. I remember there was, I used to walk around, you know, late, like starting around 11, 12 o'clock till dawn around the city and downtown, knew all the Waffle Houses. And I remember some older fellow with a little bit of a moth-eaten suit would show up and order some breakfast with us or whatever. And he was an AA guy. And I kind of like, you know, I'll just keep a straight face and, you know, I won't act any differently, but sometimes I'll just sit and study people, you know. And what impressed me is he never pushed anything on us. He never talked about his program. You know, his clothes were old and moth-eaten, but they were clean clothes. And he was a nice fellow. And that gave me a favorable impression. So when I store up things that, you know, are interesting to me, I'm a very strange individual. I guess you're probably a strange individual too. But we're great detectives. I mean, you know, just try to shine us on, you know, sell us a bill of goods. All right, so with all that behind me, I went to, the strip died, and I wound up moving out to Marietta and painting signs because I had the personality that allows me to pay great intense attention for hours with a brush. And in those days, and I would get sometimes, you know, $50, $100 an hour. That's how I afforded to help with the basic tax. I could come out and make $1,000 in a day sometimes, not all the time. I never amassed any money. I just spent it on the next road trip, you know. We looked at what we were doing working on the basic tax, and I won't go into all the structural stuff, but it was just like a fellowship-wide social club of people that found something important that they could do to make the world a better place for our people. And it was a real honor to serve them. And except for the ones that died, but they're alive in my memory. But, you know, we're the ones that break through. We broke through. If you've ever read the book, The Basic Text, and really gotten a big personal change out of it, Just think about the kids and some older persons who wrote that from scratch with no outside help. And we had obstacles. You know, we were working in Memphis. We wanted to, you know, it's only fair if we're working on a book for the fellowship. Well, if we've got something presentable, we should share that with the fellowship, and they'll tell us how we did. They'll kind of like, you know, put check marks at the good stuff and X's where they didn't like something. So the only way you can do that in our recovering addict minds was to print a few thousand copies of this inch thick book, 8.5 by 11 with the GBC binding. And we asked Joseph, who was the chair at Memphis, Joseph, there's 4 or 5 of us. Who should we send this book to, the review form? Who should we send it to? And he was doing some damn thing. He says, I think I'll send every group in the world. Just went like that. And you know, we didn't have no bosses. Can you dig that? You've known some serious hippies before, haven't you? We just had eye contact, and that's what we did. We put out the word, we need money to get a review form printed, and they sent us $17,000 in 2 weeks flat before they held the first fundraiser in San Francisco. They sent us $1,000. Can you imagine in your mind a good war where some people do get killed, but there's a payoff? You get something really great and grand and terrific and lasting goodness for people like us. I'm still on that fucking train. I cuss because I don't like people who don't cuss, because they're sneaky and they think it's okay to shoot people. And I was a draft officer. And I don't think it's okay to, you know, get up and have your breakfast, get in your car, drive to the building, go in, open your computer, crank up your drone on the other side of the road, kill a few people today. That's slammy. That's just horrible. I mean, I feel sorry for people. You know, some of the people that actually do that wake up when they're at work and they go like, oh my God, I'm not going to do this anymore. And I mean, they're like, maybe they lose track. They just wanted the money. They just wanted a job. They had wife and kids, you know, to feed. But they just leave the building. See, I don't think it's okay. I think a lot of Nazis came to this country after the war and took over a lot of major sectors like Hollywood, Big Pharma, lots of things. I hope you don't regard this as an opinion on outside. Says an observation on outside issues, if that floats your boat. But the thing is, they took over the country and they'll corrupt the hell out of everything. You know, and back home, they used to just tell all the Poles, you know, get your gun, come on out here. We're going to shoot some people this weekend. And they showed up and they got their house, their money, their business, you know. They killed about 10,000, you know, on Saturday, put them in a ditch. Y'all, this is a fun way to tell your story, ain't it? I hope I don't leave any doubt as to who I am and what I'm about. And I am never going to stop, God willing. Is that enough? What, is there time?
Yeah, 3:30.
Am I on time?
Yeah, you got a half an hour.
If you don't know, we're in trouble. Now, the other thing that happens, if I have a few more minutes, I can.
Go on.
Huh?
Just keep up.
Well, here's the thing. You would think that somebody out west would have said thank you to us. And they hated us. They hated us. Because we, you know, God blessed us. We said prayers, and God answered our prayers, so we could do things they couldn't do, and they wanted to get paid for it. So we were an embarrassment. Can you dig what I'm saying? And we were so giddy and just thrilled and surprised and happy, you know, the book, we wrote the book. How about that? You know, what else needs to be done? And I remember Joseph from Memphis and I stayed on in World Services another 6 or 7 years after the book was done. And we built the World Service Conference. It went from having 3 regions in the world to having 28 in the year that Joseph was the treasurer and I was the vice chair. And they say if you're an active chair, vice chair, you'll never be the chair. So that was, in my case, that was it. And I didn't mind because, I mean, you know, it was sort of like, I have a temporary addiction to sugarless Coca-Cola. I mean, I gotta get a kick out of it, you know, it's got kind of a bite to it and stuff like that. But you leave it in the fridge a day or two, I'll buy those big bottles, and then it loses its fizz. You know, well, when we were doing it, and we thought that everybody in the fellowship should share information, and that was the primary function of having a World Service Conference, having a basic text, and all that stuff, sharing the information. So one of the ideas in a tree is that addicts should get a home group, be a member, work your step, but also share information. If you're into H&I and you figure out a unique and workable way to get a meeting into a prison, you should share that with your other groups in your area or the areas in your region and or the other regions in the whole damn world at the WSC. And so doing cool stuff and sharing the how-to information on how to really carry the message to a whole state, for instance. Or if you got a lot of places, you know, they make these cheap jails and don't even put security guards in there. They just pay them probably $12, $15 an hour. And because it's good business. That's, you know, that's what Portugal got tired of. But that gathering experience from the group to the area to the region, a member could write a motion at their home group and their GSR could take it to the area could take it to the region, and the region could take it to the World Service Conference, and it would be processed in a world level committee, and they would react to it, and the RSR would come home and tell him what he did in California at the annual conference. Okay, so it's, first of all, it's gathering information from the fellowship, then it's processing the information, and then it's putting them into like handbooks to where it benefits the whole tribe, you know, the whole population within NA. Well, when the book got done, there were those that were following our progress closely, and we saw hundreds and then thousands and then hundreds of thousands of clean addicts. They saw dollars and cents, and you could take over parts of the service structure in those days, if you were a man to, and get paid. You could make money out of it, or you could get travel, you could get other spiffs and stuff like that. And they kind of took over. And they didn't like us because we would do it for free, and we were real good. You know, every member in the world has read that book that we, you know, no dramatics. So we just looked for other targets, put our attention. I stayed on for another 7 years. So from 79 to 89. And honest to God, I was getting bored on the Board of Trustees. They didn't let us do nothing. I mean, there's a thing in bureaucracy where if you're loved and well known and they can't fire you or defame you in some way, they just kick you upstairs and they give you a window seat in an office building, but they don't let you do anything. So I got really tired of that. So, you know, I failed re-election to the Board of Trustees, and I just felt like a cloud lift off of me. And came home and the phone still rang and I still would get good ideas. And I remember one night thinking to myself and experiencing these emotions. I mean, it wasn't like really too bad when you consider other bad things, but I was thinking, isn't this neat? I got clean and now God has made me a writer. And it's just like magic. I just write stuff for hours. And then the phone would ring and I'd talk to some people down. I lived in Pittsburgh, so they were in another state nearby. And they wanted to know if it was okay to throw a car wash and donate the money to the convention as the fundraiser type thing. So we talked about that and other things for 40 minutes. I went back to writing, and then I realized that's why it was so easy for me to write, because I was getting a constant stream of ideas from just hundreds of members all over the place, you know. There were even meetings then in Europe, Germany in place. The first step in German is meine Liebe ist nicht in meiner Handers. My life is not in my hands, you know. And it was kind of inspiring, you know. And I got a computer. I had a Super Brain 2 computer that had 2 disk drives, and WordStar or DBase would run in this, and a 5.5 floppy disk in this other one, and it would hold 50K. I didn't say gigabytes. I didn't say megabytes. I said K. So I wrote a book with that one. And then a real good friend of mine in my program had gotten a good job, and he sent me a 20 megabyte computer, and I thought I was in heaven, you know, 20 megabytes. God, that's so much. I mean, you could just take a whole book and put just 10 megabytes. I mean, it's just amazing. And went through all of that, and I was, you know, this self-examination and self-correction, you know. Most people, I think, in recovery fail to appreciate the absolute magnificence and wonderful personality change they go through. Because when you're going through it, all you know is the cops are not chasing you, the bill collectors don't call you, and your relationships last a little longer, you know. And half the time we walk around and say, well, I'm clean, but I'm not that different. What a disease. And this group conscience thing was not viewed as important. And I specifically remember being in World Services and hearing some people at that level say, well, it cost us $50,000 in 6 months to get a group conscience on so and so. We know what to do now. We don't need that. So they just stopped doing it. So they, you know, it was expensive and time consuming. They knew what to do anyway. So they decided they could do their thinking for us. Now, of course, they didn't exactly succeed. I mean, we didn't die or go out of style or stop communicating or having events. The marvelous thing about the Speaker Fest is it is almost like an active group conscience. Now people on the other side of the planet of the world can listen to 30 Years Clean and more. And they couldn't do that before. It cost a lot of money, travel, and it's just didn't happen. But now we can communicate, and what you hear shared here will go out to the whole universe on YouTube. Because there's no production company. It's not a film in the definitions of the 12 traditions. It's just simple people telling their simple, wonderful, miraculous story of recovery. And I hope that a lot of the things that I've shared with you kind of hang in your mind, because you need group conscience. You're still getting it, but you have to get it through Facebook or the web or something like that. You can't get it through what used to be our service structure. And that's what I think you guys need to know. And keep doing what you're doing. Because, God works the miracles, and God's just like a quart of water. It doesn't really care how it gets past the rock, as long as it builds up and then it gets past. And that's what we're doing. That's what we're doing with this event. And there'll probably be other breakthrough events. There'll probably be workshops. There's a lot of stuff happening now that some of it's very important and very overdue. But there's a lot of really brave men and women putting their ass on the line to help straighten out our service structure, because it's not tearing down the house. It's like taking a couple of brooms and sweeping out the trash. And I think God will guide us and bless us. So anyway, thanks for having me. And